What's up, Kiffin Falls? What's up, Art? If you're watching this live. What's up, everybody? I'm going to give some people time to join. And while we're doing that, I was going to take a look at some news on X. So I saw somebody's post in the feed where it was asking, would you take Kenneth Walker III or Joe Mixon? I personally think that's a crazy question. As much as, Kenneth Walker is unavailable at times, I think you have to smash the Kenneth Walker side. What do you guys think? Plus, he could get a second. He could get another contract, maybe even two, depending on his health and his ability to perform when he's healthy. Joe Mixon, pretty washed. If it's talking about redraft, I'd probably still rather have Kenneth Walker, given the addition of Nick Chubb to that Texans backfield. He could potentially steal some goal line work and touchdowns from him. Then there was another question where it was Jamison Williams or Jalen Waddle in Dynasty. I think I'd have to go with Jamison Williams, even though the higher upside that we've seen from Waddle does exist. Waddle's just been on the downswing the past 2 seasons. I'd like to see him be that guy again. And I think I'd rather take the ascending talent in Jamison Williams over Jalen Waddle. Also has a bit of an age discount as well. Take a look. Looks like we're still waiting on some people to pop up. Then another thing is Micah Parsons on the Cowboys taking their time to extend him. It's only going to cost them more. I don't know what y'all think, but I think it's really dumb that teams choose to wait a long time to extend their guys. It's only going to cost you more and more and more money the longer you wait for these superstars. They're going to get ridiculous contracts. I mean, the Bengals, they messed up by paying T. Higgins the franchise tag for years before finally paying him, and they could have just saved a bunch of money by already extending him. But teams are going to do what teams are going to do. I don't understand the Parsons thing because he's been awesome. He's barely missed any time, and he's an elite all-pro. Probably give everybody until about 6:10 or so, another 7 minutes potentially. I know a couple people had expressed interest in participating, so we'll see if they do end up wanting to. Taking a look here on X again, some top rookie seasons by first downs per route run in the past two classes with a minimum of 250 routes for the threshold. Puka Nacua leads, then Rashi Rice, Ladd McConkey, Tank Dell, Dontavian Wicks, interestingly enough. I know he's battled a lot of drop issues, but he does have he's one of the better separators there is. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, not surprising. Devon Vele. That's interesting. That means he's pretty efficient. Jaden Reed, not too surprising. Jalen Coker, Marvin Harrison. That's actually interesting with Marvin Harrison, given that, a lot of people are down on him after his rookie season where he didn't put up the stats that a lot of people thought he was going to. I thought he was fine and just used as poorly as he could possibly be used, but is what it is. Give it another 5 minutes or so here before we just go ahead and start. I know Woke was disappointed that he didn't get in yesterday. And feel free, if you could, give the stream a like if you're watching this live right now. I'd really appreciate it. Then another thing, man, the Bengals. This goes back to what I was saying with the Micah Parsons thing, where you have these elite superstar players that you want on your team long term, and you just want to be extremely frugal and just don't want to give them any guaranteed money. And now your defense that was atrocious last year, Trey Hendrickson's not been paid and isn't going to be here until so. And then Shamar Stewart, you're messing up his contract too with the guarantees. I remember there was some stat about their defense where their splits with and without Trey Hendrickson, they were by far and away the worst pass rush in the league without Trey Hendrickson. And then they weren't they weren't quite the worst, but they were significantly better, at least, with Trey Hendrickson in there, which obviously makes sense given he's one of the better pass rushers. But man, the Bengals, very cheap organization. Give it another 4 minutes or so. Then another interesting tweet from Fantasy Points Data. Best wide receiver seasons by first downs per route run in their history. Tyreek Hill in 2023 leads the pack with .187, which is distinctly above the second in this list in Puka Nacua at .17, who is also distinctly better than third on this list in Davante Adams. And these are elite wide receivers. Then you have A.J. Brown, relatively close, and same with Cooper Kupp. So it seems like Davante Adams, Puka Nacua, and especially Tyreek Hill's seasons are extreme outliers in their history. Bills signed their rookie. See if there's any new news. I saw another thing where it was Pete Carroll plans to split the workload between Ashton Jeanty and Raheem Mostert. They're going to get their chance to compete. I mean, do we really think that they're stealing carries from Ashton Jeanty? I couldn't be any less worried if you paid me to be less worried. I think he's going to get a ton of volume. I think in reality, what he's just saying is he's not going to get literally every single touch, which is pretty obvious in my opinion. Nothing special about that. Take a look. We still got a couple open spots here. I know Prob 1017 just saw my message, so we'll see if he joins here in just a minute. I want to give some people, I want to get a couple more people in here. I didn't anticipate it was going to be this empty, but I know it's Friday and people probably have stuff to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy the invite link and put it in a YouTube post to see if anybody wants to join right now. Yeah, sorry guys. I just want to try to give people the benefit of the doubt if they want to try and join here. It's always better to have, less empty spots so that it's more real people picking than CPU people picking. But if you are watching this right now, I'm going to go ahead and once it gets to be 6:20, I am just going to go ahead and start it. It'll just be what it is. We'll get going. I appreciate everybody, 100% guaranteed, Art, Kiffin Falls for joining right now. Hopefully we get some other people, potentially from YouTube, to pop on here. I'm going to take a look at X again real quick while we wait just a couple more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and start this draft in another 7 minutes if we don't get some more people going. I'm curious though, for anybody who's watching this live right now, if you owned Brock Bowers and you were going to tear down to Trey McBride, what would it take for you to tear down rather from Brock Bowers to Trey McBride? Would a second do it for you? Would you need something else added on top? I figure the output itself is going to be relatively similar from what we know. Yeah, shout out to Stick Stomper. I appreciate you joining, man. Wanted to give people, the benefit of the doubt. Don't want to hold up everybody. I do appreciate everybody that did hop on immediately. Sorry, guys. I just want to try to give people, a little bit of time so it's more of us actually making picks and less so the computer making picks for us. It's not quite as exciting. But yeah, looking back at that question though, what would it take to tear down to Trey McBride from Brock Bowers? I really don't even know if a second would do it. I really, just because of the age gap, I don't even know if I would even get a trade like this, but I think I'd probably want to first add it on top, a late first, something like that. But probably just not going to happen. Other tear down options, I just don't think are particularly worth it. If you're going down to somebody like, Laporta, I just think the difference in production is just going to be too much, unless of course you're just getting some ridiculous plus on top of it though. And yeah, I don't know. It's just tricky with me with tight ends because you always want the next Kelsey, and then when you see somebody that is really young and puts up a ridiculous season like Brock Bowers did, especially when you consider the lack of total touchdowns, considering the massive amount of volume that he got for us, It just feels a lot more real than somebody like Sam Laporta, who definitely played well, is in a good offense. We get that, but it's more crowded. He's not necessarily the number one. I mean, he's definitely not the number one. And then, he was relying on a lot of touchdown upside. That just isn't sticky year to year. So it just makes somebody like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride just so much more valuable to me, in my opinion. Obviously, the points per game difference favors them as well. But, well, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start this. I guess we're just going to go with what we have here. I'm going to go ahead and randomize the mock draft real quick. All right. And we're going to go ahead and start this. We'll see. Hopefully 100% guaranteed. And Art, Kiffin Falls, hopefully all are still up. I'm going to go ahead and at 100% guaranteed. Wouldn't want him to get auto-picked. Now, if he were to get auto-picked and potentially miss this first pick, then, I mean, I assume he was probably going to pick Josh Allen. He might have picked Jayden Daniels, but probably Josh Allen is who I would imagine he ends up selecting. Hey, Stick Stomp, are you live on YouTube? Are you live in the chat right now? I'm curious. I want to ask you something as a Rams fan. We'll see. It looks like 100% guaranteed. It looks like he potentially is going to miss his pick. I do appreciate him joining. I know I waited a little bit longer than I would have liked to this time, given that everybody was a little bit busy. I'm going to go ahead and add everybody in the Professional Dynasty League. Okay, so it looks like we have 100% guaranteed got auto-picked, but he ended up picking Josh Allen. Makes sense. Art goes with Jayden Daniels. It's pretty standard, right? I am not going to do anything out of the ordinary here. Just going to go straight up with Lamar Jackson. Those are the 3 top picks. Looks like we then get Joe Burrow going to the CPU auto pick, Jay Jettas, Jamar Chase. Looks like we got Stick Stomper here on the clock. this is an interesting turning point. I'd imagine he goes Bijan. So he gets the RB1 in my opinion in Dynasty. I'm fine with Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that I like somebody with the build of Bijan Robinson just for durability purposes, even though Jahmyr Gibbs hasn't really had any issues with durability so far in his career. Then it looks like Team 8 goes with Jalen Hurts, and Kiffin Falls is up. We'll see if he ends up making his pick. Would not be ideal if we have a bunch of people on auto pick. But yeah, interesting. One thing I've noticed is Patrick Mahomes is finally starting to slide into the second round in a lot of these drafts. May not happen. It's auto picks or CPU picks for some of these picks here. But for a while, he was still going in the first round, and he just has not produced as an elite quarterback one as of recently. Yeah, we know he's good. He probably has some longevity because he's really good. But being a very good quarterback that just does not produce those numbers in fantasy is just not going to cut it in the first round to me. And if you guys could like the stream, I'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comment section. Just kind of chilling with everybody, enjoying a nice mock draft here. At this point, though, it might just be Stick Stomper and I actually making picks here. I'm going to go ahead and message them in the group chat again. We'll see. Not ideal, not gonna lie. What I will do though is I will give them some time to come back and end up making their picks. They're gonna go on auto pick here. So we get Kiffin Falls being auto drafted Malik Neighbors. I love the pick. I would probably be taking Neighbors there. I think he has the upside to be the wide receiver 1 this year. Then Team 10 goes Brock Bowers. You get CeeDee Lamb at 11, Puka Nacua at 12, all reasonably standard. Interesting that we get Jahmyr Gibbs and Ashton Jeanty as the first 2 picks of the second round. Then we get Patrick Mahomes, like I was saying, is falling into the top of the second round here. Very unfortunate after the start to his career in which he had kind of fallen off to being, low-end quarterback 1. Then Kiffin Falls gets auto-drafted into having 2 wide receivers to start off with Neighbors and Brown. Perfect. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, I really like him if he's your wide receiver 2. Obviously, he's still wide receiver 1 for us in Dynasty, at least I think so. But feels a lot better to just have that kind of safety net that does have, for sure, the potential upside any given week. But you pair that with the ridiculous upside that Malik Neighbors should probably end up having this year, given that he has probably 3 quarterback upgrades. Team 8 gets auto-drafted, Jalen Hurts and Brian Thomas. Stick Stomper goes with Drake London and Bijan Robinson, so you have the Falcon stack. I am very high on Drake London. I think that he's probably not really very likely to be the actual wide receiver 1, I think, due to a lack of probable receptions. But I think the touchdown upside and the receiving yardage upside is absolutely massive. I think he's for sure a wide receiver 1, and I definitely think that he has the ability to be better than the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wide receiver 8, which is where he was drafted in the startup. So then we got Saquon Barkley to go with Chase on that team. Not a big fan of Saquon Barkley in the second round of a startup personally. Uh, Running backs that are older, coming off 350 plus rush attempts any given year, are generally bad bets in my opinion. Then you have Jay Jettis and Trey McBride. And Team 4 goes with Amari and Hampton in the second round. Interesting. I haven't really seen Amari and Hampton going this high in any startups yet. And I would really have liked to start out with something more interesting, but looks like the best bet to me is probably going to be a quarterback. And I'm going to go ahead and go with the upside on the ground of Drake May to go with Lamar Jackson. I think this build provides a lot of upside. I don't have to worry about quarterback 3 even remotely close to now. Moonlight Squad, who I believe is a Six Stomper, if I'm not mistaken, says love London red zone usage. Yes, I think Drake London is probably going to get double-digit touchdowns this year. I assume you, or at least it's a good bet, right? I assume you'd agree with that. Even though, it was a limited sample size, we saw with Drake London, or not with Drake London, with Michael Penix that, in only really 3 games, he had one of those ridiculous upside games. It was like that 40-point outburst, right? Where, it propelled him from being, kind of a later low-end wide receiver 1 to being, like the wide receiver 5 overall in a full PPR. While once again, limited sample size, love the upside of London. Very talented player. Yeah, this is crazy. This mock draft is not playing out how I would assume most mock drafts would. We get Caleb Williams, first of all, going, at the 307 just generally does not happen. He's usually far earlier than that. We have CJ Stroud going usually far earlier than that. McCarthy generally does go a little bit. He does go a little bit later than that, but I understand the upside of McCarthy for sure. And the thing is, with these startup picks, is people want to say ADP. But the thing is, if you believe in your guy and you're correct, you can get a ridiculous amount of value on them by not waiting so long to get your guy. And you can look really smart, obviously, if you smash your startup picks. So obviously, I don't need quarterback. Looking at the running backs, Breece Hall interests me. Looking at the wide receivers, JSN, Travis Hunter. No, you're good. You're good, Bobby. I appreciate you hopping in the live chat, though. I heard you're going to be doing a live stream later. So when I think about the wide receivers here, kind of gets sketchy relatively soon. Whereas with the running backs, I think there's a bunch of guys that you could feel comfortable if you wait on them being your wide receiver 1. I think I'm going to go with Jackson Smith and Jigba here. Art's up right now. So getting back to Stick Stomper's build, though, once again, JJ McCarthy generally does not go this high. But once again, if you're right with your startup picks and he ends up being as good as he could potentially be in this offense, I do think he also has a little bit of hidden rushing upside that some people don't really understand or might not believe in. Lamar Drake is elite. Absolutely. It sounds like something Bobby would do in a startup, in the sense of he just finds a way to absolutely crush every startup he's in. Gonna go over some film. We got something. Oh, we got to do something similar soon. Oh, we absolutely do, Bobby. 100%. We got to get something going. Looking at Art. Art gets Tetroy McMillan to stack with Nico Collins. I love the wide receiver duo. With Nico Collins, the injuries kind of suck, but at the same time, super talented, elite wide receiver 1 in terms of his points per game. You stack that with a talented receiver like Tetroy McMillan, who should get a lot of volume in this offense, and you have high floor, high ceiling options there. And obviously, Jaden Daniels is a high ceiling quarterback too, and floor given his rushing upside. 100% guaranteed is here and on the clock, so we'll see what he ends up doing. He did get auto-picked Josh Allen and Marvin Harrison, so I don't know if he would have gone somewhere else than Marvin Harrison, but it's not like he's cooked or anything. It's not like Howie yesterday who got Brock Bowers at the 105. Yikes. But yeah, anybody who's in the chat, what do you guys think about the Bengal situation with them not paying Trey Hendrickson and then Shamar Stewart as well? I mean, their defense was already atrocious from a real life standpoint, and if you were a fan of the Bengals standpoint, I think it sucks. But you know, if you are an owner of Joe Burrow, of Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki, any of these guys, I think it's great news. I would prefer in that scenario that they just not pay them so that their defense is as poor as possible. This does have, while it's probably going to end up happening, I can't imagine they go into the season without both of those guys. If that were to happen, man, ooh, that offense should put up a ton of points because that defense should be like historically bad. So 100% guaranteed goes with A.J. Brown to stack with Marvin Harrison. Like I said, he didn't end up actually picking Marvin Harrison himself, I don't believe. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Good pick with Breece Hall. I was hoping he was going to fall to me. I love the pick of Breece Hall. I think he has elite RB1 upside in this offense. I think he should be really efficient with Justin Fields. And I like the start he has going for him right here. Let's see what Art does. Maybe we'll see what Art does. Oh, so he goes with TreVeyon Henderson. I love the pick. I think TreVeyon Henderson has a ton of upside. One of the best pass blocking running backs coming out we've seen in some time. Really good receiving upside. Very efficient. A nose for the end zone. I think he's going to score us a lot of points in New England, and I think that he's not going to get, I think he's going to get kind of like your Jahmyr Gibbs type of workload, but I think just like with Gibbs, he's efficient enough to make it happen to where I'm not really worried about it. Rather than somebody who's maybe a little bit less efficient, like a Chase Brown that just needs a ton of volume. Terrible love by Cincy front office try and sneak that clause in. Dude, for real. What are they doing, man? Goodness gracious. So looking at the team here, I think I'm going to go with Travis Hunter and start out with two wide receivers here. To go with Lamar Jackson and Drake May. We'll see. I might swing around. Yeah, terrible move. Yeah. Man, from a real life perspective, as a Ravens fan personally, I'm overjoyed. I want their defense to be terrible. And from a fantasy perspective, as somebody that does own one share of Jamar, none of Burrow, none of Chase, and none of Brown, so really only one share of Jamar, I guess. Pretty ecstatic. I think he has a ton of upside, and we'll be happy having him. So looking at Stick Stomper, he got the combo of Baker Mayfield and J.J. McCarthy. Like that for him. Baker Mayfield was a top 5 quarterback in just about any setting here. And I think that you have a ton of upside, and I like that you kind of combine somebody that you know for sure is going to be at least more than likely a high-end producer for you. Who's not, obscenely old, with somebody that has a lot of upside and should be in a good offense with good coaching. Plus, they got a lot of, McCarthy got a bunch of offensive line upgrades too. We'll see what Stick Stomper does here. I know he has us do quarterbacks, and he has one receiver and one running back, so he could probably go receiver, running back here. Maybe he could go tight end. I personally wouldn't, but he could do that. Let's see what he does. There's a lot of options. Interesting, though, with the CPU that it shows to not be so high on quarterbacks. Maybe it knows something that I don't. Hey, Stick Stomper, man. Rome Odunze, I really like Rome Odunze. I think he's being absolutely slept on. I think he could easily be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. He is by far and away the best X. Nobody is going to be challenging him for the position of X. He has great positional versatility. I think he can play the slot as well. I mean, I think he could play flanker. Very underrated off the line of scrimmage and a very good separator, despite the people who don't actually watch film saying that he can't separate. That is just factually inaccurate. So looking here at who's available. If I wouldn't have picked quarterback, well, there would have been some interesting quarterbacks here. But we'll probably go running back here. And I'm going to go ahead with RJ Harvey. He's going to explode as long as Caleb plays mid. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really too worried about Caleb Williams. I think that he definitely has his flaws, obviously. I probably mentioned it last time I was live. You know, he doesn't really stick to structure of the play as well in the sense of getting the ball out in time. He likes to hold the ball, look for the big play, try to make something out of nothing. And, you know, he definitely has the skills to do so. He just kind of needs to regulate how much he does it. But I really do think, do you think that, you know, he's going to get the most out of him being Ben Johnson? I personally am pretty optimistic about it. And, you know, the one thing is, Caleb Williams has already shown that he has the ability to make some of these high-end plays that just most quarterbacks just are physically incapable of making, or potentially mentally if they're not capable of processing it. Great pick by Art, and especially 100% guaranteed. I was really hoping to snag Kittle. I was going to try to grab him on the swing back. That did not happen here. Very good pick by both of you guys. And so Art gets Brock Purdy to match up with Jaden Daniels, somebody that I think people are generally lower on than they should be. I think that Brock Purdy could easily be a mid quarterback one, given he has some, you know, a decent touchdown season. Then 100% guaranteed goes with Chase Brown, somebody that should get a pretty good amount of volume and should be in a high scoring offense. Interesting. So he says Ben will help Caleb. I believe in that. I do too. I'd say I'm probably an 8 out of 10 in confidence with that. Moonlight Squad says love Brock Purdy. Yeah, you know, he's one of the best. I forget if it was EPA per play quarterbacks. There is some stat that does correlate to success. It was from Fantasy Points data, I believe, on X, where his numbers are absolutely elite. And it wasn't something where the team just being good could make him perform highly in that stat. I wish I could quote the specific stat. Taking a look at who's left. I think I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker here to go with RJ Harvey. So I have Lamar Jackson, Drake May, JSN, Travis Hunter, Harvey, and Walker start here. Art has Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy. Then he has Collins, McMillan, Egbuka, and Henderson. I love the Egbuka pick for the long term. I think he's going to get JSN / Roma Dunze this year, but obviously this is a dynasty startup, so we're not particularly worried unless you're trying to sell him or, you know, really worried about contending immediately. Then I like the start for 100% guaranteed as well, especially that pick of George Kittle. That was a great pick. Six Stomper here has his quarterback set pretty much. Drake London and Roma Dunze. That could smash. I love the Caleb Johnson pick, by the way. Should get a good bit of volume. I think he's Najee Harris plus for us in fantasy. I think he's a more talented rusher of the football. Much more explosive, in my opinion. I think he has better speed as well. Let's see what Stick Stomper does here. So he goes with Jerry Jeudy. We'll see how he ends up looking without Jameis Winston there. I think that he I think that people are either way too high in general on him or way too low in general on him. I think there's not a lot of people that are in the middle. I think he's a talented player. I think he's one of the best route runners there is in the NFL. And I think he's fine after the catch as well. Definitely a huge breakout season. We'll end up seeing if that kind of holds consistently. You think he gets fed regardless of quarterbacks? For sure. I think he's probably the number 1 to 2 option every single game. Kind of, depending on the matchup, because, in the Stefanski offense, Njoku, the tight end, is featured a lot too. But, obviously, I don't need to tell you this. They're a terrible team, and they're probably going to be losing, or at the very least, in a bunch of close games, if not losing games. So he's probably going to see a lot of the offense in general will need to throw a bunch. Yep, volume play, exactly. So looking here, I'm going to take a shot on Tyreek Hill, actually. Could backfire, but I want to try to get some win now production here from the receivers. And if he can just return anything close to what he was in 2023, there's a ton of upside. We'll see if McDaniel can get his offense looking good again. It was kind of disconcerting to see that he wasn't really able to adapt. Now, more so when Tua was playing. Obviously, when you have Skylar Thompson or worse starting for you, I could definitely understand them not producing. But man, that offense is scary at times too. We'll see what Art does here. Yeah, plus Jerry Jeudy is your wide receiver 3 stick stomper, so not worried whatsoever for you. We shall see what Art does. So Art kind of has, with the exception of Ibuka, everybody's a pretty solid win now guy. And Nick Ibuka, with one injury, especially to Chris Godwin, would immediately be somebody that could put up massive numbers. And even potentially with Mike Evans out, I would assume he would be starting in 2 wide receiver sets. So definitely in terms of somebody that's kind of blocked, somebody that if I had to bet on somebody getting a bunch of volume, it would be him, because I wouldn't be as worried about the guys in front of him getting hurt or missing some time potentially as I would some other people. Then Art goes with George Pickens. So with George Pickens, I think we're going to see some ridiculous boom games from him in Dallas. It's going to be very hard for defenses to cover both he and CeeDee Lamb. And I think that potentially George Pickens might be a very good sell after this fantasy season, because I think he's going to shoot up in value given that he's still very young. And people are going to really love the upside. I just worry, and, it's kind of, I guess, helmet scouting in a way, but the whole receivers that leave Pittsburgh kind of have some issues. We saw the attempted murder allegations with Antonio Brown. That was crazy. Trying to look at some players who I think are good and bad values. Looking at the quarterback situation, starting to get pretty dry here. Kind of after you get the Goff pick, I think it starts to run and get a little bit scary. Hence why 100% guaranteed is going to go ahead and grab his Dak Prescott, somebody that is a little bit older, but still has probably, 4 more years left, unless everything kind of fails for him. He has a ton of control over the Cowboys with his contract, and when he does end up playing and he doesn't deal with injuries, he usually finishes very high for us in fantasy. Should be running an explosive offense there in Dallas, especially with the addition of George Pickens. Then he goes with Jalen Waddle, somebody who has kind of fallen in value the past 2 seasons due to injuries, but is still plenty young enough to return some value for you. Should be in position to have a decent season. Very explosive, and hopefully I'm kind of betting the same thing with Tyreek Hill, that McDaniel is going to get this offense back going the right direction. So we'll see about that. So Art goes with Joe Mixon. With going with Joe Mixon here, only thing you got to worry about, or you maybe aren't worried about, is the addition of Nick Chubb. I don't think Nick Chubb is going to really look very good rushing the ball, but maybe steal some touchdowns. With Joe Mixon, though, over the first half of the season, he was ridiculously productive. Kind of trailed off at the end with some injury, and then, especially the poor offensive line play. That part wasn't really his fault. Looking at the running backs that are left, I like Monty. It's kind of a fall off after that, in my opinion. Then we got some guys that I like for the future. Tight end. Nobody that I would break my back over to draft. So I'm going to go with Dave Montgomery here. Especially, with Kenneth Walker on the team, I got to worry about injuries potentially with him. But, when he plays, he can produce explosive wide receiver 1 numbers for us. So looking at 100% guarantees team, he has MHJ, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Waddle. A bunch of upside there. Breece Hall and Chase Brown. I like the Breece Hall pick especially. Love the George Kittle pick. I thought it was very good value. Just signed that extension. And then he has Dak and Josh Allen as his quarterback 1 and 2. Lots of upside there. Art goes with upside at running back 2 in the short term with Joe Mixon. Like that. Oh, man. So Devontae Adams goes to Six Domper. I like the pick. I'm pretty sure you're a Rams fan based on your picture. Should get plenty of volume in this offense. It should be high scoring. Very good win now production, especially kind of to offset the risk of if Rome Odunze doesn't break out like we think he will. I think I agree with you, though, that he will. And if he does, then, you double dip. I was really hoping Tucker Kraft was going to make it. That was a really good pick, in my opinion. I was going to go for him, too. Then Kyle Pitts goes off the board. That pick's kind of mid to me. Taking a look at who is left. It's getting kind of gross at receiver. I'm going to go ahead and go with Chris Godwin, though, and get some win now production. I think I'll get some of that. Stack him with JSN, Hunter, and Tyreek Hill. 2 guys that are a little bit older. I'm less worried about Godwin because he doesn't really win with elite athleticism, though. And I'll just wait on tight end. It was a really good pick of Tucker Kraft. Not too high on Kyle Pitts anymore. I used to be a huge believer in him. Dalton Kincaid. I think Hawkinson's going to return to being a very good tight end and a difference maker. So yeah, we'll see how that ends up working out. Art is on the clock. Looking at him, he could go running back, maybe receiver. He doesn't have a tight end. I guess he could go tight end too. Maybe he gets his quarterback 3. We'll see what he ends up doing here. Hey, Stick Stomper. I'm curious, where do you think Tucker Kraft finishes? I think that he could be a sneaky top 5 option. He's really good after the catch, and he was thriving on, relatively limited volume, at least compared to some of these other elite options. I'm curious, do you think he's going to end up being one of these guys that's just able to be very efficient because he's so good with the ball in his hands? Then we got Art going with Jaden Reed, somebody who's really talented, amazing with the ball in his hands, kind of like a Deebo Samuel in a way, in the sense of how you can utilize him. just does not get the volume that he deserves. I hope that changes, but it remains to be seen. I think he's a very talented player, and I especially like him if he's your wide receiver 5. It's not like you're depending on him as your wide receiver 1 especially, but even your wide receiver 2. Wide receiver 5 is good value, lots of upside. And if this were a best ball, I would especially like him. Let's see. You said ceiling is top 5, but I think he's 7. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And then, you got him as this isn't redraft, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You got him as the 9. So if that does come to fruition, obviously you got a value there. And, you just didn't have to take him where you have to take some of these other guys. So I think that was smart of you too. We'll see if 100% guaranteed pops back on. Exactly. Love the ADP. Absolutely. Want to see a volume bump? Yeah. I really don't understand why, I really think that the wide receiver, I think that Jayden Reed, Matthew Golden, and Tucker Kraft should see the large majority of the targets. It's going to be really frustrating, man, if we get another year of Dontavian Wicks getting these random targets, Romeo Doubs getting these random targets. Players I just don't think are as talented as some of their peers in the same offense, personally. But Matt LaFleur's offense scores points. He does not give a crap about us in our fantasy, unfortunately. I wish he did. And Josh Jacobs, obviously, if he stays healthy, should score a lot of points, especially when it matters the most. Speaking of Josh Jacobs, he went in the 5th round after Christian McCaffrey. Interesting. I personally would have. It was obviously a CPU pick, but I want nothing to do with Christian McCaffrey. He could definitely be the running back 1 this year, but nah, man. Good on that. Then we get 100% guaranteed going with Khalil Shakir, a very safe floor guy. Ceiling isn't necessarily that high, but then again, you're getting him to kind of be a replacement for when MHJ, AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle aren't starts for you. So that's fine too. Then you get Juwan Jennings, somebody that definitely has a lot of upside, especially, there's the news of Brandon Ayuk probably missing the start of the year, potentially being on the PUP list, which if so, definitely would provide some upside for Jennings. Here, I think I'm going to go with Bashal Tutin. So he's somebody that is incredible at breaking tackles. His missed tackles forced rate is very, very high. Absolutely explosive. One touch and he could be gone. I do worry that he does not immediately see a Bucky-like renaissance in this or appearance in the fantasy season at the beginning of the season, but he is this regime's pick. I think he's the most talented running back on this roster, and I think that the upside in a Liam Cohen offense, even though he's not Bucky Irving, they're just not the same player whatsoever. I do think that he has that kind of upside. And Art, the pick before, got somebody I was interested in Trey Benson. I love Trey Benson. Very talented player. I comped him to a Breece Hall light coming out. And in all but one game, which was week 2, where they had backup players in, they were winning and they were running the ball every single play over and over again. He was incredibly efficient the entirety of the season. And so I think that if that game didn't happen and a lot of people don't understand that context, I think people would be a lot higher on Trey Benson. And, this was the only year that James Conner somehow managed to stay healthy. It had never happened once. And he still missed week 18. So then 6 Nomper goes with Zach Charbonnet. I was hoping he was going to make it back to me. He did not. Great pick. there's always a good chance. And why I wanted to get some running backs here is because I have Kenneth Walker. Smart pick by you. Zach Charbonnet probably starts, I'd imagine, at least 3 to 4 games guaranteed this season based on the injury history, which, I mean, I guess, sure, James Conner proved that that's not necessarily true in a given year, but if I had to make a bet, I would make the bet you did. Love the Isaiah Likely pick. I think there's a reasonably decent chance that Andrews is gone at some point this season. And even if not, I know that John Harbaugh said that he wants him to be an All-Pro. I don't really give a crap about the coach speak personally. I hate that Evan Ingram went right before me. That sucks. But I do think Isaiah Likely is by far and away, as a Ravens fan, their most talented tight end. I think he's arguably their most talented pass catcher, despite the fact that he's not been given the opportunity to prove it so far. Looking at the running backs that are left. Pretty cooked, in my opinion. Our receivers are kind of mid. I'm going to go ahead and... Who's left at tight end? Wow, it's getting... Tight ends are going like crazy here. So I have some win now production. I'm going to shoot for the moon here and go with Kyle Williams. Reports are he's the wide receiver 4 right now. I don't think that's really news at this point. If this was August, I'd be a little bit more worried, but it's hard to expect a 3rd-round rookie pick to just immediately come in and usurp people that are established veterans. That generally doesn't happen when you've been given that kind of draft capital. And I think he's talented enough to beat out Kayshon Boutte and anybody like that. But it may not happen right away, and it may not happen at all, but I'm going to shoot for the moon with that upside. So we got 6 on per year saying Sharp's unlikely. The same idea for me. They both will be starters next year at worst. High-end backups today. Yeah, very high-end backups. Very, very high-end. I would be, I'm pretty sure you agree. You're definitely getting some starts out of Charbonnet. When that is, you may not be able to control. But, you got your Bijan Robinson and Caleb Johnson. So it's not like you're depending on him necessarily to be your running back 1 or 2 or anything. So wouldn't be as worried. So Art goes with Mason Taylor here. Art, if you're watching this, while I'm not personally high on him as a talent, I think that the volume is going to be there. And if I'm wrong about his talent, and I may not even have to be wrong about his talent, he should get a ton of volume. He's probably the number 2 in that offense. And with tight ends, you kind of want guys that could potentially, you'd prefer somebody that's obviously the number 1 target in their own offense, but the real difference makers are either the first or second option in their offenses. You look at Brock Bowers, he was the number 1 in his offense. Trey McBride, the number 1 in his offense. Sam Laporta is a bit of an exception because it's such a high scoring offense, and he did get sometimes the volume to be number 2, a little bit inconsistent with the volume. Kittle at times is the number 1 in his offense for sure. Tyler Warren, we'll see about that. Rookie. Hawkinson has the ability to be the number 2 in his offense as well. So then 100% guaranteed goes with Cooper Kupp, getting another wide receiver, and he got Calvin Ridley as well. So trying to get some vet production there. Personally, a little bit out on Cooper Kupp. I think he's a little bit past the age of producing. His success percentile, his success rates against man zone and press per Matt Harmon were very, very low, despite a bunch of volume. I'm kind of worried about him. If I could sell him, I would. I sold him before the playoffs this past season for a 1st-round pick, believe it or not. I was ecstatic. And I don't think I could get anywhere near that value again. And, in the league, I traded him. Usually you can't get any value, but the guy was really wanting some win-now production. Art goes with Jaden Blue. So with Jaden Blue, the upside is obviously there. It's a wide open backfield. The backfield is just not that talented, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with somebody that I think will, just like what Six Perrier was doing. I'm going to go with Jordan Mason, somebody that I think will get some starts. I think that Aaron Jones is going to generally be the guy you want when he's healthy, but they went out of their way to trade for Jordan Mason, and he's shown that he does have the ability to handle a high workload. So I'm not particularly worried. I think I'll get some production out of him, which kind of helps with Tootin not being, guaranteed really very much either. But decent amount of upside, and I think he probably sees some of the field. Then we get Six Number going with Jalen Milroe. So he's his quarterback 3, right? Yeah. So, I kind of think of him like Justin Fields in the worst case scenario where you're getting the ridiculous, if this guy starts, even worse than Justin Fields, if he's Anthony Richardson, where he's just a horrible quarterback, we still see 20-point games out of Anthony Richardson. With Jalen Milroe, the upside is absolutely there. Wouldn't be worried about that at all. I think you might benefit from getting potentially, if you're trying to contend, a quarterback later that's starting that's maybe old, but you could definitely ride it out with Mayfield and McCarthy. Jalen Noel, I think, is really talented. I actually like him more as a player than I do his counterpart, Jaden Higgins, which some people will not will disagree with. I don't particularly care. You think they want him to win the job, Loki? I hope so. That would be absolutely amazing. I think I have 1 share of Jalen Milroe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I have 1 share of him. Say Milroe only has to beat out stop Darnold, sign me up. Yeah, Sam Darnold, I think, is absolutely cheeks, personally. So I'm going to go with Ferguson here. So 2nd round pick by the Rams. 2nd round pick, I imagine they're going to try to use him. I think he should immediately be the best tight end in this offense. Probably going to be relegated to the 3rd option behind Puka and Devontae Adams. With Puka, though, Puka is always either injured, missing time, or having an injury scare. So I think he could instantly be the number 2 target in this offense. He's great after the catch. If I trust anybody in the entire NFL to scheme up touches for good players, especially in run after catch situations, and fit their strengths, I think McVay is one of those guys. At least you could argue Shanahan, you could argue Liam Cohen, sure, Ben Johnson obviously too, but definitely one of those other guys. Bijan and Jake Ferguson for Ladd, Aaron Jones, Ray Davis, no Gray, Chig 27 second. Not super flex or TEP. Start 8. I want the. I'd assume you'd agree, Woke. I'd want the Bijan side, especially in a start 8. You want the super studs. Ferguson has the ability to be a decent tight end. I mean, he was hurt this past season, and then Dak was out too. I think I just, in general, when it's a bunch of stuff kind of thrown together, I just want the best asset. I think I'd definitely go the Bijan side because I think Ferguson has the potential to be the 3rd best part of the deal as well. 27 seconds also interesting for sure. Ray Davis, I think James Cook is going to end up playing. Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy, Stick Stomper. Sometimes I feel like I'm crazy. So 100% guaranteed goes with Garendo. I like the pick for the upside. Very good player. Does have his injury concerns, but at this point, you're just shooting for upside. Art goes with Sam Darnold. I like the pick. Guaranteed a starting job as of right now. Before it gets too gross, I'm going to go ahead and lock up Matthew Stafford as my quarterback 3. Yeah, James Cook was back at practice. Luke says, I got Bijan, I have Bowers, and Ferg side. Oh, yeah, Bowers. Well, I mean, if anything, if Ferg ends up doing anything, you can try to ship him off, maybe package him with something, man. I mean, you're pretty good at trading. I, you generally get really good value when you trade with people, so I think you could get something done, especially if somebody else's tight end goes down and they want to have one for the playoffs. Generally, I try to target people in the playoffs with positions of need. So Stick Stomper goes with DJ Giddens. Somebody that yesterday I was saying, Jonathan Taylor, very talented guy. His missed time in each of the past 3 seasons, despite his RB12 finish this past season, had not finished very high in terms of his yearly finish in the previous 2 seasons. I think that just like with Zach Charbonnet, we probably see a couple starts out of DJ Giddens if he's good enough to win that backup role, and I think he is. Wouldn't be worried about that. ETN falls, considering, he's presumed at this point, I guess, the starter. We'll see if that ends up staying truthful. Looking at who is left. Nothing remotely close to guaranteed, even as a backup at that point. I think I'm going to shoot for who I think is the best player here. I think Pat Bryant could start immediately in the slot. I think he's probably going to overtake Devon Vele in short order, at least in my opinion. I think Bailey's fine, but I don't think he's anything particularly special. Now, take this with a grain of salt because it's just coach speak, but he did compare him to Michael Thomas, which I think that, like Michael Thomas, he's an aggressive player, very physical player. Obviously, I don't think he's quite as refined as Slant Boy was. But I think he's very good with the ball in his hands, very aggressive, very physical. And even though he's not particularly good at stacking vertically in a straight line, his success rate on 9 routes wasn't very good. And he's not very good against press coverage. I think they can stick him in the slot, and I think that's what they're going to do. And, it's kind of an open wide receiver room once you get outside of Courtland Sutton. A lot of different opinions on as to who the second wide receiver option is. Obviously, they have Ingram, who could be the second option. Six Stomper says Giddens is the Raz God. Yes, I love DJ Giddens. I comped him to David Johnson. Kind of a stiff, straight up runner, but very good contact balance. Very elusive in the open field. Had a lot of longer runs. Kind of gets caught from behind, but still gets those chunk gains over and over again. Very, very shifty with the ball in his hands too. Very good juke moves. Theo Johnson goes to Art. I love the pick, man. Theo Johnson, very talented tight end. That Linz-Frank injury, I think Theo Johnson is another one of those guys where he could potentially be the second option on the offense. I mean, do they really want to give Wan'Dale Robinson 140 targets again, guys? I guess they could. They have Darius Slayton too, who, if Malik Neighbors misses time, gets a lot of opportunity, but I don't think he's particularly great. Then 100% guaranteed goes with Elik Manor. So with Manor, somebody that's in a wide open wide receiver room, suspect hands at times, but sneakily fast. You wouldn't think he's that fast. Has some superb highlight catches. The upsides there. And at this point, we're just shooting for upside. Brashard Smith, love that. He could get the Jerick McKinnon role if that opens up for him in Kansas City. Very good returner. I think that should definitely help him make the team. And then, we've seen that, running backs with low end draft capital in Kansas City do see the field. I think they learned their lesson of drafting crappy running backs way too high. And so they just try to get good running backs really later in the draft now. That CH pick is going to haunt them for a substantial amount of time, in my opinion. Art goes with Shadur Sanders. Hey, Art, I don't know if you're watching this, but well, anybody that's watching this that's in the chat, do you think that who do you think ends up winning the QB job in Cleveland? I'm curious what y'all think. I'm going to take a look here. And I'm going to go ahead and go with Harold Fannin. I love him. I comped him to his tight end mate and David Njoku, but in Evan Ingram's body. I also think Jonnu Smith is a good comparison for Harold Fannin Jr. as well. So, Stick Stomper, you were saying, A.M. Manor, that's what you were saying. Looks head and shoulders above other rookies so far in camp highlights. Yeah, I take those with a grain of salt, but I mean, obviously it looks good. Woke says Shooter Sanders. Yeah, I mean, he was projected to obviously, like everybody knows, go way earlier in the draft. He kind of fell, and I think that we can all agree that a lot of it had to do with kind of personality and the way he handled the draft. So he's arguably the most accurate quarterback in the class too, and that does matter, even if he doesn't necessarily have that elite arm talent, elite mobility. Still, I think a talented player. Man, we get 3 tight ends in a row here. The CPU, good pick with Roschon Johnson. AD Mitchell, man, it sucks that he's. Although I think I get where you're going with that. Given that AR has another shoulder injury, we don't know, but there's obviously the potential for him to miss some time with the surgery. So with Daniel Jones there, the deep ball does suck though with him, and he just doesn't really do it as much. But I mean, if anything, I think he's a good play for the long term, because if Daniel Jones doesn't end up looking very good, then I think they just replace him and then replace Anthony Richardson too. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. I'm going to make the bet that Kyle Monangai wins that kind of power role, if that is necessarily a thing in the new Ben Johnson offense. I know you went with Roschon Johnson. I don't really have an opinion as to which one I think is better. I want to see kind of where they stand in the depth chart in a couple of months. But I think that you and I both have the right idea of trying to figure out who potentially is going to be that back that maybe gets some of the, if this does end up happening, David Montgomery type of role in this offense. Woke says he thinks that Shooter fell because the ceiling is probably the 20th best quarterback. Yeah, which is also true. At this point, give me talent with AD Mitchell. Yeah, I think he's really talented. I comped him to kind of like a very rough CeeDee Lamb, more so before and during the catch. I don't think he has the yak ability of CeeDee Lamb, but very talented, extremely impressive body control, a rare ability to accelerate while changing directions. You see on those out and ups with him. He created, if you watch that film breakdown I did at the end of this past season on AD Mitchell, the out and ups, he created so much separation. The ball was just thrown 10 feet out of bounds every time. Woke says there's dudes posting training camp pass statistics to boost him. I saw that, man. I'm just like, bro, who gives a crap right now? It's they're not even facing real defenses like that. Nah, I'm not trying to hear that. Jamal Williams, 16 touchdowns from inside the 5. Roschon can be that. Yeah, he can. Monangai can be that. Somebody can absolutely be that. Whoever wins that power role. I've heard good things about both of them. We'll have to see how that plays out, but that could definitely work in your favor. I could take an L, or it could go the other way around. It really just depends. Anyone but Swift. Yeah, DeAndre Swift is Mr. Inefficiency. And then he'll just break out a 40-yard run. He's kind of like Jerome Ford in that way, where they're extremely inefficient for most of the game. Then they break out a long run, and then, wow, their yards per carry doesn't look as bad as it used to. So 100% guaranteed, good picks here. Art, I like the pick for the long term with Tank Dell if he's able to come back. I know some people aren't going to like that, but I think he's a talented player. And if he does come back from injury, I think he got a steal and he looks good. 100% guaranteed going with Taj Brooks and Krosky Merritt. I love that. Krosky Merritt, I think he has 2 Jags at this point ahead of him in the backfield. I think that Brooks, I think that Chase Brown he's not a Jag, but I think he's really not that impressive. I think he was just given a lot of volume. His advanced stats aren't very good. His film was okay. And I think Taj Brooks has a lot of upside, especially if something happens. And I think he could get some upside. And so can Manungai. Stick Stomper says, yeah, absolutely. Then we got Art. He goes with the counterpart in the back, or in the, not the backfield, the quarterback room, two Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. So you have kind of 2 out of the 3 options that are probably going to be given the shot for long-term potential upside. The only worry I have is potentially if they are a terrible team this year, maybe they're in the sweepstakes for a first-round quarterback that could actually be very good. We'll see about that. But if they are able to earn a starting job and look good, they could potentially hold that forever. So we do like that. Taking a look. It's getting kind of gross here, honestly. I'm going to take a shot on Oronde Gadsden here. I forget what I heard about him. It was something really good today. Oh, Greg Roman, I believe, was saying something, and once again, potentially just coach speak, but Greg Roman was saying something like he could potentially be, I think he said number 2 in this offense or something. I forget what the exact quote was, but I think Gadsden, in terms of being a pass catcher, is by far and away the most talented tight end in that offense. And we all know the Greg Roman offense does lend itself to being able to produce solid tight end production. They just haven't had good tight ends. At least they didn't this past season. So Arian Smith, I think, is a high upside play as well. If he is good, he could potentially be the number 2 in that Jets offense as well. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I think he's probably 3rd, but I mean, at this point, it's the 19th round of his startup. So I think I like the upside there. I like the Mike Gesicki pick by the CPU as well. I think that, in the absence of T. Higgins, Gesicki has 20-point upside as a tight end. And so even though he's a little bit older, I think that's a great pick by the CPU here. Looking at the quarterbacks, meh. At running back, I'm going to go ahead and go with Isaiah Davis. Shoot for the upside. I usually, in these mocks, have been getting him really late. I think the upside, in case Breece Hall does get hurt, is pretty darn good. He was really efficient on the ground and through the air this past season. Despite not getting, as much hype and the great draft capital we particularly like from our guys. But I think he's a talented player. And then Art goes with Quinn Ewers. Another guy, if you're going to bet on a quarterback missing time, I do think that Tua is probably a good pick given what we've seen. So now I'm going to take a look at some of our teams here real quick before we hop off. So I'm going to take a look first at 100% Guaranteed's team. We'll take a look at all of our teams that we actually drafted, no longer the CPUs. So 100% Guaranteed has Josh Allen and Dak Prescott in his quarterback room, starting at least. Then he has Tua. So he does have 3 quarterbacks. I love the upside of his quarterbacks. Then you got Breece Hall, who I think is really talented. I think is absolutely a bounce back candidate. I'm not worried about the concerns of a potential timeshare. Who cares? Chase Brown, I think, is fine. I think he should get a good bit of volume and should produce. And I like that he's your running back 2 here. Who else you have? Garendo, a bunch of upside options. Do you have any other running backs? So kind of thin at tight end or at running back in terms of starters right now. But I like the wide receiver core of MHJ, AJ Brown, Waddle, Shakir, good floor play there. Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp. So some vet upside with a little bit of youth mixed in there. And then obviously the George Kittle pick was a great pick. One of the best values, I think, in the draft. Then we're taking a look at Art's team real quick. You got Jaden Daniels and Brock Purdy. I think that's great. I think Jaden Daniels could be a top 3 quarterback. I think that Brock Purdy could be a top 5 quarterback if he gets, the benefit of some positive touchdown regression. He's already shown that he can be one of those. So then you also got Sam Darnold. So we'll see what Sam Darnold looks like, but I like that. And then, you have a bunch of upside shots at quarterback 2 to try to get a good quarterback 3 on your team. I like that. You got Travion Henderson and Joe Mixon. I love Travion Henderson. I think he can give us Gibbs light kind of like production. I think he's very efficient and a similar player in terms of efficiency to Jahmyr Gibbs, even if he's not necessarily the same athlete. Then you got Joe Mixon, very high upside RB2 for you. Taking a look, you got Trey Benson. I love Trey Benson. I think he's going to be a very good play for us. I think that James Conner's probably going to miss time. He has every other year. He somehow made it through the fantasy season for us this past season. Probably not happening again, though. Tons of upside with him. Not really. And Jaden Blue, I do like that. Wide open backfield. Taking a look at your receiver core, I like that too. You got Nico Collins, Ted McMillan. You got Emeka Egbuka for the future. George Pickens, smash upside. Jaden Reed, high upside as well. Coker, very underrated player. Tank Dell, we'll see if he comes back from injury. And then Mason Taylor, who I think is a sneaky player. I'm a little bit lower on his talent personally, but yeah, like I said, he could potentially, and I don't think it's unreasonable to think that he will be the second option in this passing offense. So even if we don't think that Justin Fields is necessarily the most talented player, should get tons of volume, and that's what we like is tight ends that are either the first or second option in their offenses, preferably. And then I like the upside of Theo Johnson, same thing. Somebody that could be the number 2 option in his offense besides Malik Neighbors. Then I'm going to take a look at Stick Stomper's team here. So he went with J.J. McCarthy and Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield for the more so sure thing with the top 5 upside than J.J. McCarthy. I think, the rebuilt offensive line, the return of Hawkinson in his second year from the ACL tear, obviously Jay Jettas, Jordan Addison. I love Ty Felton, by the way, too. I like the upside with him. Obviously, a quarterback-friendly offense with O'Connell. Taking a look at your quarterback 3, by the way, you have Jalen Milroe. Questionable as to whether he will or will not start this season, but tons of upside if he does see the field. I think the worst case is Anthony Richardson, which is definitely somebody that you can throw in your lineup for ridiculous upside. Taking a look at your running back room, you got Bijan, obviously, clear-cut tier 1 running back. Caleb Johnson, I think, is Najee Harris plus for us in terms of production. Should get lots of volume. Everything the Steelers staff has said has indicated that. And yes, McCarthy will run too. He does have rushing upside. I think that it could potentially be somewhat reminiscent of Bo Nix in terms of the rushing output we could theoretically see. Taking a look at your wide receiver core, you obviously have Drake London, Rome Odunze, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Adams. I love the youth. And then I like that in the event that Rome Odunze is not a breakout candidate this year, you got Devontae Adams for that win-now production. I love the upside of Zach Charbonnet. Isaiah Likely, I think, is a very good tight end. It has a lot of upside. I like that you have him backing up Tucker Kraft, so you have kind of a sure thing. I love the upside of Hunter, DJ Giddens, Roshan Johnson. And finally, taking a look at my team, I got Lamar and Drake May. Tons of upside. Guys who could both be top 5 quarterbacks, depending on the rushing output we see, and potentially some improvement from Drake May. We know the situation's a lot better. At running back, RJ Harvey. The signing of J.K. Dobbins, I view J.K. Dobbins as kind of like an Aaron Jones, James Conner type of player where, yeah, he's really good, but he's just never healthy. So I'm not really worried for Harvey long term. Then Kenneth Walker has the potential to give you those 30-point games when he's healthy, but he's injured quite a bit and a little bit inconsistent. But I got David Montgomery as kind of that surefire, safe guy when he plays that has a decent amount of upside. Should score plenty of touchdowns. Bashal Tutin for the upside. Monangai for a shot at this, Bears RB2 role, however unlikely, and then Isaiah Davis for the same thing. Receiver JSN, Travis Hunter. I love the upside of Travis Hunter. I think that the offense is going to be consolidated pretty substantially to just him and Brian Thomas. JSN, good player too. Tyreek Hill, if he returns to that 2023 form, then I'm going to love that. Tons of upside. We'll see if that ends up happening or not, though. Chris Godwin, if he returns to form, he was the wide receiver one at some point. We'll see if Josh Grizzard is able to keep that consistency going. Who knows about that, though? I still think he's going to be good. Kyle Williams, sky high upside. The potential stack with Drake May. If he hits and hits big, then I hit big with that stack. Got a quarterback 3 in Stafford. It'll get it done. I'll probably need to be shopping for one in the future. Jordan Mason, probably going to see some work this year. Pat Bryant, upside play. Harold Fannin Jr., I think, could replace David Njoku this next in 2026, and I love him as a prospect. Gadsden, upside too. I think he's a very underrated receiving tight end. Overall, a good mixture here of win now and some potential upside. Taking a look at the chat, Six Number says he traded St. Brown, Knoll, Purdy, Pollard, Tajay, and 2/3 for Gibbs and May in a super flex 2-point tight end premium. So basically, yeah, I think you won that trade. I would rather have May than Purdy. I like Purdy, though. And then between St. Brown and Gibbs, I think that's a toss-up. But if you take Gibbs and St. Brown out of it, because they're both give or take first-round startup picks, early second round at the worst, they kind of cancel out. Would I rather have Knoll, Purdy, Pollard, and Tajay in 2/3, or would I rather have Drake May? People can say what they want. I'd rather have the better quarterback. And I think Drake May is a better quarterback. And I think he's going to show it now that he has a better situation around him. It's incredible that he didn't look more like Caleb Williams this season. But I'm sure some people could disagree with my take on that. But I also think that, I'm not as worried about Jahmyr Gibbs seeing that much regression. I know that their new offensive coordinator has mentioned him as a guy that they want to get the ball to specifically, and they didn't mention Amon-Ra St. Brown in that quote, and I think it was unprompted as well, unsolicited. So I do think that we could potentially see more of a split in Gibbs' favor, and I do think we potentially see a little bit of decreased volume for St. Brown, although I still think he's the number one. I think he's still a wide receiver 1. I don't think we see another wide receiver 3 overall season from Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I don't really think Gibbs is impacted as much as Amon-Ra St. Brown is. But once again, I think you could go either way with that trade, depending on whether or not you believe in some of those backups. I personally, in most trades, if it's even remotely close, I just want the best asset in the trade. If it's not close, obviously I want the side that's a landslide, but generally I do like to just get the best players. And I think you got the 2 best players. You could argue St. Brown, but in the sense of between Drake May and Knoll, Purdy, Pollard, Tajay, or 2/3, I think May is by far the best asset there personally. You say May is going to turn heads, and usually OCs lean into the run year 1. Yeah, and I mean, it's not like they have the offensive line to do so or anything, right? They absolutely do. They specifically, besides maybe the Eagles, but you could still argue the Lions, have the offensive line that you could do that for. So yeah, good trade. I'm trying to think if I've done any trades recently. Take a look. Does anything sound familiar? So I'm curious what y'all think. I traded Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt and Phil Maffa away. So I gave away Krosky Merritt and Phil Maffa, and I got Chimere Dike, the Titans wide receiver, kind of an open room, a bit of an unknown, probably an extremely long shot, and 26 seconds. So essentially Krosky Merritt and Maffa for a 26 second and Chimere Dike. What do you think about that? Taking a look at some news here. Which side in a dynasty 1 QB PPR league? Devontae Smith, projected late 26 first and a late 28 first, or Puka Nacua? Smith and 2 late firsts, or Puka Nacua? Okay, so you say Krosky got those sweet feet, but I like that you got the second round for unprovens. Yeah. Once again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where you just want the best asset, and kind of why, even though that's a lot of stuff on the one side of the that you gave away, you just got the best. Beside, if you cancel out, Gibbs and St. Brown, you got the best asset. So if you're not just grossly overpaying and you get the best asset, that's generally the smart decision. And I think the second rounder was the smart decision there. I think it was the correct process. Anything could happen though. And I already can tell you, I'm going to trade away that second round pick and not make a late second round pick. Puka, if you're contending, package if you're rebuilding. Yeah. I don't know what you think, but if I was going to give away 2 firsts and Smith, I would probably try to get another elite tier wide receiver. Now, you may not be able to do it because it's just contingent, on who is actually willing to trade away an elite guy. But I definitely agree. If you could guarantee Puka could stay healthy, man, that would be a smash in my opinion. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna vote Puka though. Okay, well, it was new, so you only had 1 vote, so 100%. Take a look to see if there's anything more. Looks like we got Jeff Mueller. He's one of these injury doctor guys. So he is saying Kendra Miller's in trouble is this instant reaction. The more logical reaction, Devin Neal and CH aren't it. Curious what they say in the comment section of that. Kendra Miller's dead. He was in what's his name's doghouse, new DC for the Bears. Literally wearing a Puka jersey right now. He's one of the most talented wide receivers there is. He just scares me with his injuries, man. It's kind of like Nico Collins. It sucks because he's just so talented. And with Puka, he is so fearless and willing to just get beaten up that he just does not care and will just fight through contact to the detriment of his body. But great scheme fit, very tough player, really good guy too. His interviews are really awesome. Besides that, there really hasn't been anything new, it looks like. Oh, this is interesting, actually. Before Devin Neal, I like Devin Neal too, man. I comped him to, in terms of his play style, to Le'Veon Bell. In the sense of he's very patient, he has very good vision, he sets up linebackers quite well. Very shifty as well, and kind of like Le'Veon Bell, kind of lacks that long speed to really house these 70-yard touchdown runs, but in general is going to get quite a few chunk gains because he's so good with his vision and setting up defenses for failure. But keep trade cut here real quick, man. Dynasty Superflex. Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Herbert. So the way I like to think about this is for the keep, who is going to sustain their value long term? Usually I say running back is not going to, generally, if all else fails, just because of age. He's 23 going into second year. Amon-Ra is like 25. Justin Herbert. Who's the most likely to lose value? This is a tough one, man. Let me think. Who could get you the most in a trade? You're saying keep Gibbs, trade Brown, cut Herbert? I definitely agree with the cut Herbert. I think that he probably goes last consistently in startups. I don't know if that's how you came to that assessment, but I think that's correct. Then I think wide receiver market is pretty saturated. The running back market is starting to become more saturated than it was, but still, I think the wide receiver market's a lot more saturated than the running back is. I already mentioned, I think you agreed that Jameer Gibbs is the better bet. So I think I agree with you, actually. Yeah, that's a good call. But anyways, anybody that's still watching it, I absolutely appreciate you hopping on real quick. You said could argue trade Gibbs because you would garner a bigger return. You know, I think that in a lot of leagues that's true, and then I think it's also contextual. I know in one of my leagues, potentially in two of mine, but I know one for sure. You could not wide receivers, even though uh, somebody that's a stud at their position and young should be highly valued. Wide receivers, just for whatever reason in that league, you cannot trade for an elite wide receiver. It does not matter what you do. Um, but once again, that's also one specific league. You could definitely argue that in general that's true. But I really appreciate you hopping on, man. I appreciate anyone else that's watching right now that hopped on. It was a lot of fun. I think everybody drafted very well. I'm hoping when I do this again next week, I'm going to do it probably on Tuesday, I believe. People hopefully won't be having as much going on. We can maybe have a couple more people hop in, but it was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. I really